The sound of laughter from the bedroom wasn't mine. I stood frozen in my own hallway, grocery bags heavy in my hands, listening to my husband's voice mixed with another woman's giggles. The keys were still in my hand, still warm from being outside in the summer heat. I had come home early to surprise him with his favorite dinner. Instead, I was the one getting surprised. "James?" I called out, my voice shaking despite trying to sound normal. The laughter stopped. Complete silence filled the house like thick smoke. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. The grocery bags slipped from my hands and apples rolled across the hardwood floor. Each apple made a dull thud as it hit the ground, like small bombs going off in the quiet. "Honey? You're home early?" James's voice came from upstairs. He sounded nervous, different from his usual confident tone. I knew that voice talking to him earlier. It was Sandra Mills, his boss's wife. The same Sandra who had been so sweet to me at company parties, always asking about my job at the local library, always complimenting my hair or dress. The same Sandra who had invited us to dinner just last month, sitting across from her husband Robert while smiling at me like we were best friends. My legs felt like they were made of water. I grabbed the stair railing and pulled myself up, one step at a time. Each step felt like walking through mud. The house suddenly seemed too big, too quiet except for the sound of my breathing and footsteps on the stairs. "I got off work early," I managed to say, still climbing. "Thought I'd make that pasta dish you like." More silence. Then I heard quick movements from our bedroom, feet hitting the floor, dresser drawers opening and closing. The sound of hushed whispers. My stomach twisted into knots so tight I thought I might be sick right there on the stairs. When I reached the top, James was standing in the doorway of our bedroom. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy. Behind him, I could see Sandra sitting on the edge of our bed, smoothing down her skirt with shaky hands. Our bed. The bed where James and I had made promises to each other 5 years ago about forever and always. "This isn't what it looks like," James said, running his hand through his hair. But it was exactly what it looked like. Sandra couldn't meet my eyes. She kept staring at her hands, her face red with shame. The room smelled like her perfume, something expensive and floral that made my nose itch. It was the same perfume she always wore to company events, the one I had actually complimented her on once. "Then what is it?" I asked, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. Inside, I felt like I was falling down a deep hole with no bottom. James opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like a fish gasping for air. Sandra finally stood up, grabbing her purse from the nightstand. The same nightstand where I kept a picture of James and me from our honeymoon. "I should go," Sandra whispered, finally looking at me. Her eyes were full of tears, but I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not when she was standing in my bedroom in my house after being with my husband. "Yes, you should," I said. She walked past me without saying anything else. I heard her footsteps going down the stairs, heard the front door open and close. Her car started in the driveway and then she was gone, leaving behind only the smell of her perfume and the sound of my world falling apart. James and I stood there looking at each other. 5 years of marriage, 3 years of dating before that, and this is where we ended up. Him with his wrinkled shirt and guilty face, me with my heart breaking into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever put back together. "How long?" I asked. He sat down on the bed heavily, like he was carrying something too heavy for his shoulders. 3 months. 3 months. While I had been working extra hours at the library to save money for our anniversary trip. While I had been planning surprise dinners and picking out gifts for him. While I had been talking to my sister about maybe trying for a baby soon. 3 months of lies and sneaking around and pretending everything was normal. "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "I don't know," he said, which was probably the worst answer he could have given me. "It just happened. Things like this don't just happen. People make choices. They decide to lie and sneak and hurt the people who love them most. They decide that their promises don't matter anymore." I walked to our dresser and stared at myself in the mirror. Same dark skin, same brown eyes, same face I'd had this morning when I kissed him goodbye and told him I loved him. But somehow I felt like a completely different person. The woman who had left for work this morning had been married, had been happy, had been planning a future with the man she loved. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was none of those things. "I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight," I said. "We should talk about this," James said. "We can work through this." I turned around to look at him. He was still sitting on our bed, the bed where he had been with another woman just minutes ago. His face was hopeful, like he actually believed we could just talk our way past this. "Work through what? You sleeping with your boss's wife in our bed? You lying to me for 3 months? You making me look like a fool at every company party while you and Sandra shared secret looks?" He flinched like I had hit him. Maybe my words were hitting harder than I thought they would. I made a mistake, he said. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. This was a choice. Lots of choices. I grabbed some clothes from the dresser and threw them into a bag. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it closed. James sat there watching me, not saying anything else. What else was there to say? As I walked toward the bedroom door, I stopped and looked back at him one more time. This man I had loved for 8 years, who I had planned to grow old with, who I had trusted with everything I had. The grocery bags are on the floor downstairs, I said. There's ice cream in there. It's probably melting. Then I left him sitting there and walked out of the house we had bought together, out of the life we had built together, out of everything I thought I knew about love and trust and forever. My sister's house smelled like vanilla candles and baby powder. She opened the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face and pulled me inside without asking any questions. That's the thing about sisters. They know when your world has exploded just by looking at you. What happened? She asked, taking my bag and leading me to her couch. James is cheating on me. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth, like I was talking about someone else's life. With Sandra Mills, his boss's wife. She sat down next to me and wrapped her arms around me. I hadn't cried yet, hadn't let myself feel anything except shock and anger. But sitting there on her soft couch, surrounded by pictures of her kids and the life she had built, everything hit me at once. I cried until my throat hurt and my eyes were swollen. I cried for the 8 years I had given to James, for the future I had planned with him, for the trust that was broken and couldn't be fixed. My sister held me and didn't say anything, just let me fall apart in her living room while her kids slept upstairs. I'm so stupid, I finally said when the tears slowed down. No, you're not. You're loyal and trusting, and those are good things. James is the one who messed up, not you. But I felt stupid. Stupid for not seeing the signs, for believing his stories about working late, for not noticing how he had started dressing nicer for work, how he had been distant lately, how he always seemed to have his phone with him now. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know. That was the truth. I had never thought about what I would do if James cheated on me because I never thought he would. We had problems like every couple, but I thought we were solid. I thought we were the kind of couple who would make it through anything. I spent the next 3 days at my sister's house, calling in sick to work and trying to figure out what to do with my life. James called and texted constantly, begging me to come home so we could talk. I ignored all of it. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to listen to him explain why he had thrown away our marriage for someone else. On Thursday morning, my sister went to work and left me alone with my thoughts and too much coffee. I was sitting at her kitchen table, staring out the window at her neighbor's garden, when my phone rang. It wasn't James this time. It was Robert Mills, James's boss, Sandra's husband. I stared at his name on my phone screen, wondering if I should answer. What could he possibly want to say to me? Did he know what his wife had been doing? Was he calling to blame me somehow, like this was my fault for not keeping my husband happy? Finally, I answered, Hello. Hi, this is Robert Mills, James's boss. I was wondering if I could talk to you. His voice sounded tired, older than I remembered from the company parties. Usually he was loud and confident, always telling stories and making people laugh. Now he sounded like someone had taken all the energy out of him. I'm not sure what we have to talk about, I said. I found out about James and Sandra. The words hung in the air between us. So he knew. His wife had been cheating on him with my husband, and now we were both left picking up the pieces of marriages we thought were solid. I'm sorry, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. I'm sorry too. For both of us. There was silence for a moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, probably trying to figure out what to say next. This wasn't exactly a normal conversation for either of us. I was wondering if you'd be willing to meet me for coffee, he said. I think we both deserve to know the whole truth about what's been going on. I wasn't sure I wanted to know the whole truth. I already knew enough to understand that my marriage was over. Did I really need more details about how James and Sandra had been sneaking around, lying to both of us? But sitting alone in my sister's kitchen, I realized I did want to know. I wanted to understand how this had happened, how two people I trusted had been able to lie to my face for 3 months. Maybe Robert had answers I didn't have. Okay, I said. When? This afternoon? There's a coffee shop on Main Street called The Daily Grind. Do you know it? I knew it. It was a quiet place with small tables and good coffee, the kind of place where you could have a private conversation without worrying about being overheard. I'll be there at 2 o'clock. Thank you, he said. I know this is hard for both of us. After I hung up, I sat there wondering what I was getting myself into. Meeting with Robert seemed like a reasonable thing to do. We were both victims in this situation, both betrayed by people we loved. But something about his voice, something tired and sad and maybe a little angry, made me nervous. I spent the rest of the morning getting ready, trying to make myself look normal even though I felt anything but normal. I picked out a simple dress, nothing too fancy but professional enough for meeting with James's boss. I put on makeup to cover the bags under my eyes from crying and not sleeping. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into the daily grind. Robert was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of him. He looked different than he did at company parties, older, more serious. His usually perfect hair was messy, and his expensive suit was wrinkled like he had slept in it. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down across from him. He had ordered me a latte, the kind with foam art on top that I always got when James and I came here together. It seemed strange that he would know what I liked to drink, but then I remembered all those company parties where spouses mingled and made small talk about meaningless things. "How did you find out?" I asked. He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Sandra left her phone at home yesterday. She never leaves her phone anywhere. It kept buzzing with text messages, so I looked." He took a sip of his coffee and made a face like it was bitter. 3 months worth of messages between her and James. Everything. My stomach twisted. Text messages meant this wasn't just physical. They had been talking, planning, sharing things with each other that they should have been sharing with us. "I'm sorry," I said again. 22 years of marriage, he said, staring out the window. 3 kids. A house, a life, everything we built together. And she threw it all away for what? Excitement? Something new. I didn't have an answer for that. I had been wondering the same thing about James. We had a good life together, or at least I thought we did. We laughed together, talked about our dreams, supported each other through hard times. Why wasn't that enough? "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I already filed for divorce this morning. My lawyer is handling everything." He looked at me with tired eyes. "What about you?" "I don't know yet. I'm staying at my sister's house while I figure things out." We sat there drinking our coffee and not talking for a while. The coffee shop was busy with the afternoon crowd, people grabbing drinks before heading back to work, students studying at laptops, couples sharing pastries and talking quietly. Everyone else's life seemed so normal, so uncomplicated. "There's something else," Robert said finally. I looked up at him. His expression had changed, become more serious somehow. "I've been doing some thinking since I found out. About what I want to do next, about what kind of life I want to build after this mess." I waited for him to continue, not sure where this conversation was going. "I know this might sound crazy and I know the timing is terrible, but I have a proposition for you." The way he said proposition made my heart speed up. This conversation was taking a turn I hadn't expected. "What kind of proposition?" He leaned forward, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "Marry me." The coffee shop seemed to go silent around us. I could see Robert's mouth moving, but it took a few seconds for his words to actually make sense in my brain. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I know it sounds insane," he said quickly. "But hear me out. We're both getting divorced. We're both starting over. We both know what it's like to be betrayed by the people we trusted most." I stared at him like he had just suggested we rob a bank together. This was James's boss, Sandra's husband, a man I barely knew beyond small talk at company parties. And he was asking me to marry him while I was still technically married to someone else. "Robert, I think the stress of everything that's happened is making you—" "I'm not having a breakdown," he interrupted. "I've been thinking about this all night. Look, I'm 52 years old. I don't want to spend the next 20 years dating and trying to find someone new, wondering if they're going to cheat on me too. You're 31, you're smart, you're beautiful, and you understand what I'm going through because you're going through it too." My hands were shaking so badly I had to put my coffee cup down. This was the strangest conversation I had ever had in my life. "We barely know each other," I said. "We know the important things. We know we can both be faithful to our marriages, even when our spouses can't. We know we both value honesty and commitment. And we know we both deserve better than what we got." He reached across the table and covered one of my hands with his. His hand was warm and steady, completely different from James's hands, which were always moving, always fidgeting with something. "Think about it practically," he continued. "I'm financially stable. I own my company, I have a house that's paid off, investments, retirement savings. You wouldn't have to worry about money ever again. You could quit your job at the library if you wanted to, or keep working if that makes you happy. Whatever you want." "This isn't about money," I said, pulling my hand away. "No, it's not. It's about partnership. It's about two people who understand each other choosing to build something together instead of trying to start over alone. I felt dizzy, like the room was spinning around me. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry was what to make James for dinner. Now I was sitting in a coffee shop listening to his boss propose marriage while my own marriage fell apart. "I need time to think," I said. "Of course. This is a big decision." He pulled out his business card and wrote something on the back. "That's my personal number. Call me when you're ready to talk more." I took the card with numb fingers. His handwriting was neat and precise, just like everything else about him seemed to be. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Why me? You could marry anyone. Someone who isn't connected to this mess." He was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee even though he hadn't added anything to it. "Because you understand. Anyone else would look at me and see a man whose wife cheated on him, a man who couldn't keep his marriage together. They'd wonder what was wrong with me, why Sandra chose someone else. But you know it wasn't about us. You know it was about them and their choices." I understood what he meant, even though this whole conversation felt like something out of a dream. The shame I felt wasn't really about what I had done wrong, it was about being the kind of person someone could cheat on, about not being enough to keep James happy. "I have to go," I said, standing up so quickly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Wait." He stood up too. "I know this is overwhelming. But think about what your alternatives are. You can go back to James and try to work things out, knowing you'll never really trust him again. Or you can start over alone, trying to rebuild your whole life from scratch. Or you can consider a third option." I walked out of the coffee shop without answering him, but his words followed me all the way back to my sister's house. What were my alternatives, really? That evening, my sister came home from work to find me sitting on her back porch, staring at Robert's business card. "You look like someone who's seen a ghost," she said, sitting down next to me. Something like that. I told her about my coffee meeting with Robert, about his impossible proposal, about the choice he was asking me to make. She listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. Usually she had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. "What do you think?" I asked when I finished the story. "I think it's the craziest thing I've ever heard," she said. "And I think you're actually considering it." She was right. As insane as Robert's proposal was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because I was in love with him, I barely knew him, but because everything he had said made a certain kind of sense. "James called while you were out," she said. "He wants to come over and talk." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you weren't ready to see him yet. But he's not giving up. He seems to think he can convince you to forgive him." The thought of seeing James, of listening to him apologize and make promises he had already broken, made me feel tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "Maybe I should consider Robert's offer," I said. "Or maybe you should take some time to figure out what you actually want, not just what seems like the easiest way to avoid dealing with James." That stung because it was probably true. Robert's proposal wasn't really about love or partnership. It was about two hurt people trying to find a way to feel safe again. But was that so wrong? What if easy is what I need right now? I asked. "Then you're not the sister I know. The sister I know fights for what she wants. She doesn't take the easy way just because it's there." I went to bed that night thinking about what I really wanted from my life. For 8 years, everything I wanted had been tied up with James. The house we would buy together, the kids we would have, the trips we would take when we saved enough money. Now all of those dreams felt like they belonged to someone else. What did I want for myself, separate from any man? I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to trust the person I was with. I wanted to build something that wouldn't fall apart the moment someone else seemed more interesting or exciting. Maybe Robert was right. Maybe what we were both looking for wasn't passion or romance, but partnership and security. Maybe love wasn't the only foundation for a marriage. The next morning I called him. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told him. "And? I want to know more. About what you're really proposing, what this marriage would look like. Can we meet again? Somewhere private this time. My house maybe?" Going to his house seemed like crossing a line I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. But if I was seriously considering his proposal, I needed to understand what I would be getting into. "Okay, this afternoon? I'll text you the address." After I hung up, I sat there wondering what I was doing. Was I making the biggest mistake of my life, or was I finally making a decision that put my own needs first? My phone buzzed with another text from James. "Please come home. We can work this out. I love you." I deleted the message without responding. Love wasn't enough anymore. James loved me, but he had still chosen to betray me. Sandra probably loved Robert, but she had still chosen to hurt him. Maybe what Robert was offering, honesty, partnership, security, was worth more than love that came with no guarantees. I spent the rest of the morning getting ready to go to his house, to hear his full proposal, to make a decision that would change everything about my future. For the first time in days, I felt like I might be taking control of my life instead of just letting things happen to me. Robert's house was nothing like I expected. From the outside, it looked like every other house in the expensive neighborhood. Big, perfect, the kind of place where people who had made it in life were supposed to be happy. But when he opened the door, I could see that the inside told a different story. Moving boxes were stacked in the hallway. Furniture was covered with sheets. Pictures had been taken down from the walls, leaving behind lighter squares of paint that showed where they used to hang. It looked like a house that was being packed up, a life that was being taken apart piece by piece. "Sorry about the mess," Robert said, leading me through the chaos. "Sandra took most of what she wanted yesterday. Her lawyer and mine worked out who gets what." "How are your kids handling all this?" I asked. His face got tight like someone had pulled a string too hard. "They're angry. At both of us, but mostly at me for filing for divorce so quickly. They think I should try to work things out with their mother." We ended up in his kitchen, which was the only room that still looked normal. He made coffee while I sat at the counter, trying to imagine what it would be like to live in this house, to wake up here every morning, to call this place home. "Tell me what you're really thinking," he said, handing me a mug. "I'm thinking this is insane," I said honestly. "I'm thinking I don't know you well enough to marry you. I'm thinking my sister is right and I'm just trying to avoid dealing with my real problems." He nodded like he had expected me to say that. "You're probably right about all of that. But let me ask you something. What's your alternative? Go back to James and spend the rest of your marriage wondering if he's cheating again? Start over at 31 and hope you find someone better? Online dating and wondering if every man you meet is going to lie to you too?" The questions hit harder than I wanted them to. I had been trying not to think about what came next, but he was forcing me to face the reality of my situation. "At least with me, you know exactly what you're getting," he continued. "I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not to win you over. I'm not going to make promises about love and romance and forever. I'm offering you partnership, security, and honesty. What would this marriage actually look like?" I asked. He sat down across from me, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked nervous. "We'd be friends first. Good friends who take care of each other. We'd live together, share responsibilities, make decisions together. We'd be faithful to each other because we both know what it feels like to be betrayed." "And the physical side of things?" His face got red, and I realized this successful, confident man was actually shy about this part of the conversation. "We'd figure that out as we go. No pressure, no expectations. Whatever feels right for both of us." "What about love?" "What about it? Look where love got us. Love didn't stop James from cheating on you. Love didn't stop Sandra from throwing away 22 years of marriage. Maybe it's time to try building something on a stronger foundation." I thought about James telling me he loved me every morning before work, even during the 3 months he was betraying me. I thought about Sandra hugging me at company parties, acting like we were friends while she was sleeping with my husband. Maybe Robert was right. Maybe love wasn't enough. "I need to know more about you," I said. "About who you really are, not just the person I've met at parties." For the next 2 hours we talked. Really talked, the way I hadn't talked to anyone in months. He told me about growing up poor, about working his way through college and building his business from nothing. He told me about his first marriage, about how he and Sandra had met when they were both young and broke and full of dreams. "We grew apart over the years," he said. "I was working all the time building the business. She was raising the kids, managing the house. We became roommates instead of partners. I thought that was normal, what marriage was supposed to be like after a while." "When did you know she was cheating?" "I suspected for a while. She was different, happier, more energetic. She started caring about her appearance again, buying new clothes, going out with friends more often. I told myself it was good that she seemed happy again." "But you knew." "I knew. I just didn't want to deal with it. I kept hoping it would end on its own, that she'd realize what she was risking and stop. I understood that kind of willful blindness. I had ignored signs too, told myself James was just stressed about work when he started acting different." "What made you finally look at her phone?" "She came home from lunch with you last week, remember? That day you and she went shopping together while James and I were at the office." I remembered. Sandra had suggested we spend the afternoon together, just the two of us. We had gone shopping, gotten our nails done, talked about everything and nothing. It had been a good day, one of those times when I felt lucky to have such a nice friend. "She came home glowing," Robert continued. "Happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. And I realized it wasn't because she had spent the day with you. It was because she had spent the day thinking about him, planning when she would see him next. I was watching my wife be happy about another man, and I couldn't pretend anymore. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Look at what we both learned from this mess and decide if we want to use that knowledge to build something better. When I left his house that evening, I had more to think about than ever. Robert wasn't offering me a fairy tale, but maybe fairy tales were overrated. Maybe what he was offering, honesty, partnership, security, was more valuable than passion that could disappear as quickly as it came. That night, James showed up at my sister's house. I was sitting on the front porch when his car pulled into the driveway. For a moment, I thought about going inside, avoiding another confrontation. But I was tired of running away from hard conversations. He got out of the car slowly, like he was approaching a dangerous animal. He looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. Part of me felt sorry for him, and I hated that part of myself. "Can we talk?" he asked, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. "Talk." He sat down on the steps, far enough away that we weren't touching but close enough that I could smell his cologne. The same cologne I used to love, that now just reminded me of lies and betrayal. "I ended it with Sandra," he said. "Congratulations." "I mean it. It's over. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake, and I want to fix things with you." "You can't fix this, James." "Yes, I can. We can go to counseling, we can work through this together. People get past affairs all the time." I looked at him sitting there, my husband of 5 years, the man I had planned to grow old with. He looked sincere, desperate even. Maybe he really meant it. Maybe he really was sorry. But sorry wasn't enough anymore. "Even if I could forgive you, how would I ever trust you again?" I asked. "How would I know you were really working late and not with someone else? How would I know you were telling me the truth about anything? Because I would prove it to you. Every day for as long as it took." "That's not a marriage, James. That's parole." He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. "Is there someone else?" he asked finally. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, have you met someone? Is that why you won't even consider working things out?" I thought about Robert, about his proposal, about the choice I was facing. Was there someone else? Not in the way James meant, but maybe yes in a different way. "This isn't about someone else," I said. "This is about you choosing Sandra over me for 3 months. This is about you lying to my face every single day. This is about you making me feel like I wasn't enough to keep you happy. You were enough. You are enough. You just what? Got bored? Wanted something new? Decided our marriage vows didn't matter?" He stood up and started pacing back and forth in front of the porch. "I don't know why I did it. I don't know what I was thinking. I know it was wrong, I know I hurt you, and I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'm asking for one anyway because I love you and I can't imagine my life without you." For 8 years, those words would have meant everything to me. Now they just sounded like more promises he might break. "I can't do this anymore," I said, standing up to go inside. "Wait." He grabbed my hand. "Just tell me there's hope. Tell me there's something I can do to earn your forgiveness." I looked down at his hand holding mine, at the wedding ring he was still wearing. The ring that matched the one I had taken off and left on my sister's kitchen counter 3 days ago. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. His face crumbled like I had hit him. "Don't say that. Please don't say that. It's already decided." "Is this about money? About the house? We can figure all that out. You can have whatever you want." "It's not about money." "Then what is it about?" I pulled my hand free and looked at him one last time. This man who had been my everything for 8 years, who I had trusted with my heart and my future and my dreams. "It's about the fact that I don't love you anymore." I went inside and left him standing in the driveway. Through the window, I watched him get back in his car and sit there for a long time before finally driving away. That night, I called Robert. "I want to hear your full proposal," I told him. "I'll pick you up tomorrow morning," he said. "We have a lot to discuss." Robert picked me up in a car I had never seen before, a simple black sedan instead of the expensive sports car he usually drove to company events. Everything about him seemed different now that we weren't pretending to be casual acquaintances. He was still polite, still careful with his words, but there was something more real about him. "Where are we going?" I asked as we drove through town. "I want to show you something." We drove for about 20 minutes out of the city and into the countryside. The houses got bigger and farther apart, surrounded by trees and rolling hills. Finally, he turned down a long gravel driveway that led to a house I had never seen before. It wasn't as big as his house in town, but it was beautiful in a completely different way. It was older, made of stone and wood, with large windows and a wraparound porch. Gardens surrounded it, full of flowers I couldn't name but that filled the air with sweet scents. "What is this place?" I asked as we got out of the car. "It belonged to my grandmother. She left it to me when she died 5 years ago. Sandra never liked it, too far from town, too old-fashioned. But I've been fixing it up, working on it myself when I needed to get away from everything." He led me up the front steps and unlocked the door. The inside was nothing like his house in town. Where that house was formal and perfect, this one felt lived in and comfortable. The furniture was old but well made, the kind of pieces that got better with age instead of falling apart. "It needs work," he said, sounding almost nervous. "The kitchen needs updating, some of the floors need refinishing. But the bones are good. It's solid." I walked through the rooms slowly, taking everything in. The living room had a stone fireplace and built-in bookshelves filled with old books. The kitchen was small but had big windows that looked out over the gardens. Upstairs, there were 3 bedrooms and a bathroom with an old clawfoot tub. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked when we came back downstairs. "Because if you say yes to my proposal, this is where we would live. Not the house in town. That's too full of memories, too connected to my life with Sandra. This place is clean, neutral. We could make it ours." I could picture it somehow. Waking up in one of those bedrooms with sunlight streaming through the windows. Having coffee in the kitchen while looking out at the gardens. Reading by the fireplace on cold nights. It felt peaceful in a way my life hadn't felt in a long time. "Tell me exactly what you're proposing," I said. We sat down on the old couch in the living room, and he took a deep breath like he was preparing for the most important business presentation of his life. "Here's what I'm thinking. We get married as soon as both our divorces are final. No big wedding, just a simple ceremony at the courthouse. We move in here together and spend the first year getting to know each other as housemates and friends. And then we see what develops naturally. Maybe we fall in love, maybe we don't. Maybe we become the kind of couple who holds hands and plans romantic vacations. Maybe we become the kind of couple who watches TV together and shares household duties and is content with quiet companionship. Either way is fine with me. What about physical intimacy?" His face got red again, but he didn't look away. "That's up to you. Completely up to you. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we're still married, still committed to each other. And if one of us meets someone else, falls in love with someone else, then we talk about it honestly. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're both done with the kind of love that makes people do stupid things and hurt the people who trust them." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens. There was something appealing about what he was describing. A marriage based on choice rather than emotion, on commitment rather than passion. A marriage where both people knew exactly what they were signing up for. "What about children?" I asked. "Do you want children?" "I thought I did. With James, I mean. But now I don't know. My kids are grown. If you decide you want children, we can talk about it. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm not trying to convince you to want anything you don't want." That was different from James, who had always assumed we would have kids someday, who had never asked me what I actually wanted. Robert was asking me to choose my own life instead of just going along with someone else's plans. "Why me?" I asked again. "Really? You could find someone who wasn't connected to this mess with James and Sandra." He was quiet for a long time, looking around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. "Because you understand what it feels like to have your trust broken by the person you trusted most. Because you know the difference between love and loyalty. Because I've watched you at company parties for 3 years, and you're always kind to everyone, even the people who are boring or awkward or difficult. That's not much to base a marriage on. It's more than most people have. Most people get married because they're in love, and then they spend years finding out they don't actually like each other very much. We're starting from the opposite direction." I thought about that. James and I had fallen in love quickly, gotten married because we couldn't imagine being apart. But when I really thought about it, did we actually like each other? Did we have fun together when we weren't being romantic? Did we respect each other's opinions and choices? "I need time to think about this," I said. "How much time?" "I don't know. A few days? A week? Take all the time you need. But while you're thinking, consider this. What's the worst thing that could happen if you say yes?" I thought about it. "We could end up miserable together." "And what's the worst thing that could happen if you say no?" "I could end up miserable alone." "Exactly. Either way, there's risk. But if you say yes, at least you're not facing that risk by yourself." We drove back to my sister's house in comfortable silence. When he walked me to the door, he didn't try to kiss me or hug me or do anything that would make this feel like a date. He just shook my hand like we were business partners who had just concluded an important meeting. "Think about it," he said. "And remember, this isn't about love or romance or any of the things that failed us before. This is about two smart people making a practical decision about how they want to spend the rest of their lives." That night, I called my divorce lawyer and told her to speed up the process. I wanted to be free of James as quickly as possible, whether I decided to marry Robert or not. Then I sat down and made a list of pros and cons, the way I used to do when I had to make difficult decisions. Pros: financial security, a nice house in the country, a partner who understood what I had been through. No more dating, no more wondering if someone was lying to me. A chance to build something stable and honest. Cons: marrying someone I didn't love. Giving up on the possibility of finding real love again. Settling for something safe instead of something passionate. But as I looked at my list, I realized the cons were all about things that might never happen anyway. How did I know I would ever find love again? How did I know the next person I fell in love with wouldn't hurt me the same way James had? At least with Robert, I knew what I was getting. He wasn't promising me fairy tales or forever or any of the things that had turned out to be lies when James said them. He was promising me honesty, partnership, and respect. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than most people ever got. The next morning I called him. "I want to try it," I said. "Are you sure?" "No. But I'm sure I don't want to go back to the way things were. And I'm sure I trust you more than I trust anyone else right now. Then let's do it. Let's build something new together." After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope that James would change or that our marriage could be saved, but quiet, steady hope that maybe my life could be good again in a completely different way. My sister came home from work to find me packing my things. "Where are you going?" she asked. "I'm getting my own apartment while I wait for the divorce to be final. And then I'm getting married again." "To Robert?" "To Robert." She sat down on the bed and watched me fold clothes into boxes. "Are you sure about this?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." "Why?" I stopped packing and looked at her. My sister, who had been married to the same man for 10 years, who had built a life based on love and trust and all the things I thought I had with James. "Because sometimes safe is better than sorry," I said. "And because I'd rather build something real with someone who understands me than spend the next 20 years hoping to find something magical with someone who might just hurt me again." She nodded slowly. "If this is what you want, I support you. But promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't settle for less than you deserve. Even in a practical marriage, you deserve to be happy." "I promise." But as I said it, I wondered what happiness would look like in a marriage without love. Would it be enough to have companionship and security? Would it be enough to wake up next to someone who was honest with me, even if my heart didn't race when I saw him? I guess I was about to find out. Moving into my own apartment felt like stepping into a new life. It was a small place, nothing fancy, but it was mine. For the first time in 8 years, I could arrange the furniture however I wanted, hang pictures I liked, buy groceries without thinking about anyone else's preferences. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. James didn't fight me on anything. Not the house, not the car, not the division of our savings account. His lawyer said he just wanted it to be over as quickly as possible. I wondered if that was because he felt guilty, or because he wanted to be free to pursue someone else. Either way, I was grateful. Every day I stayed married to him felt like wearing clothes that didn't fit anymore. Robert and I talked on the phone every evening, getting to know each other in a way we never had before. I learned that he read mystery novels, that he could cook better than most restaurants, that he had been taking care of his elderly father until he passed away 2 years ago. "What was your grandmother like?" I asked one night. "The one who left you the house." "She was practical," he said. "Never wasted anything, never complained about what she didn't have. She used to tell me that happiness wasn't about getting everything you wanted, it was about wanting what you had." Sounds wise. She would have liked you. She always said the best marriages were between people who chose each other with their heads as well as their hearts. I thought about that after we hung up. Maybe that's what had been wrong with my marriage to James: too much heart, not enough head. I had loved him so completely that I hadn't stopped to think about whether we were actually compatible in the ways that mattered for the long term. 3 weeks after Robert's proposal, I got the call from my lawyer. The divorce was final. I was officially single for the first time in 8 years. That evening, Robert took me to dinner at a quiet restaurant outside of town. Not a romantic place, just somewhere we could talk without being interrupted or recognized by people from work. "How do you feel?" he asked after we ordered. "Free," I said and realized I meant it. "Sad but free." "I know what you mean. My divorce was final yesterday." How are your kids handling it? His face got tight the way it always did when he talked about his children. They're angry with me for not trying harder to save the marriage. They think I gave up too easily. Did you? No. I gave up exactly when I should have. When I realized Sandra had already given up months ago. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. The restaurant was nearly empty, just a few other couples talking quietly at their tables. Everyone else seemed to be having normal conversations about normal things: work, kids, weekend plans. I wondered if any of them were sitting there planning to get married for practical reasons rather than love. When do you want to do this? Robert asked as we were finishing dessert. Soon. Before I lose my nerve. Next week? Next week. We went to the courthouse the following Friday morning. I wore a simple blue dress I had bought the day before. Robert wore a dark suit that made him look like he was going to a business meeting. There were no flowers, no music, no guests. Just two people making a practical decision about their future. The ceremony took less than 10 minutes. We exchanged rings, simple gold bands we had bought together the day before. When the judge pronounced us husband and wife, Robert kissed my cheek gently, like he was sealing a business deal. How do you feel, Mrs. Mills? He asked as we walked out of the courthouse. Mrs. Mills. It would take some getting used to, but it sounded right somehow. More right than Mrs. Williams had ever sounded. Different, I said. Good different. We drove to the house in the country, our house now, and Robert carried my suitcases up to the master bedroom. This is your room, he said, setting the bags down by the window. I'll take the guest room down the hall. I had expected that, but it still felt strange. Married couples were supposed to share a bedroom, weren't they? But then again, we weren't like most married couples. For now, I said. For now, he agreed. That first night in the house, we made dinner together in the small kitchen. Robert had been right about being a good cook. He made pasta with a sauce that was better than anything I had ever tasted in a restaurant. We ate by candlelight, not because it was romantic, but because the overhead light in the dining room was too bright. What happens now? I asked. Now we learn how to live together. We figure out who does what around the house, who pays which bills, how we want to spend our weekends. Like roommates. Like partners. After dinner, we sat on the couch in the living room and watched TV like an old married couple. Robert read the newspaper while I worked on a crossword puzzle. It was peaceful in a way my evenings with James had never been. James was always moving, always talking, always needing attention or entertainment. Robert was content to just exist in the same space, comfortable with silence. When it was time for bed, we said goodnight at the top of the stairs like polite strangers. I went to my room and he went to his, and I lay awake for a long time wondering what I had gotten myself into. But I wasn't unhappy. Confused maybe. Uncertain about the future. But not unhappy. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. Robert was already dressed and making breakfast, humming quietly to himself. Good morning, he said when I came downstairs in my robe. I hope you don't mind that I started without you. I'm an early riser. I don't mind. He handed me a cup of coffee made exactly the way I liked it, with cream and just a little sugar. It occurred to me that James had never learned how I liked my coffee, even after 8 years of marriage. What do you usually do on Saturdays? I asked. Work in the garden, fix things around the house. Read. What about you? I used to do laundry and cleaning. Sometimes I go shopping or visit my sister. Well, now we can do those things together. If you want to. I did want to. It felt good to have someone to share weekend chores with, someone who didn't expect me to do everything myself while he watched TV or went out with friends. We spent the morning working in the garden together. Robert showed me which plants needed water and which ones were ready to be harvested. He had tomatoes and peppers and herbs I had never heard of. Everything was organized and well tended, like the rest of his life. Sandra never liked gardening, he said as we picked tomatoes for lunch. She said it was too much work for not enough reward. I like it, I said. It's peaceful. Then it's yours now. You can plant whatever you want, change whatever you want to change. That afternoon, we drove into town to buy groceries together. It was the first time we had been out in public as a married couple, and I was curious to see how it would feel. At the grocery store, we ran into Mrs. Henderson, who worked at the library with me. Oh my goodness, she said when she saw us together. I heard about your divorce from James. I'm so sorry, dear. Thank you, I said. She looked at Robert curiously, clearly wondering who he was and why we were shopping together. Mrs. Henderson, this is my husband, Robert Mills, I said. Her eyes went wide. Your husband? But I thought. We were married yesterday, Robert said smoothly, putting his arm around my shoulders. Small ceremony, just the two of us. Well, congratulations, she said, though she looked confused. That's quite a surprise. After she walked away, Robert and I looked at each other and started laughing. I guess we're going to get that reaction a lot, I said. Are you okay with that? I think so. People will talk for a while, but then they'll find something else to gossip about. That evening we got a call from my sister. I ran into Mrs. Henderson at the gas station, she said. She told me you got married yesterday. Please tell me she was confused. She wasn't confused. You actually did it? You married Robert Mills? I married Robert Mills. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Are you happy? She asked finally. I looked around the living room where Robert was reading his mystery novel, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. The fire was crackling in the fireplace and I could hear crickets singing outside the windows. Yes, I said. I think I am. Then I'm happy for you. But I want to meet him properly. Bring him to dinner on Sunday. I'll ask him. When I hung up, Robert looked up from his book. Everything okay? My sister wants us to come to dinner on Sunday. She wants to meet you properly. Are you ready for that? Introducing me to your family? You're my husband now. They'll have to get used to it eventually. He smiled, the first real smile I had seen from him since this whole thing started. Yes, I suppose they will. That night, as I got ready for bed, I realized something had changed. When I thought about the future now, I didn't feel scared or uncertain. I felt curious about what Robert and I would build together, about what our life would look like in a year or 5 years. Maybe this practical marriage would turn into something more, maybe it wouldn't. But either way, I was no longer alone, no longer afraid of being hurt by someone I trusted. For the first time in months, I fell asleep easily and slept through the night without any bad dreams. Sunday dinner at my sister's house was exactly as awkward as I expected it to be. My sister's husband, David, kept looking at Robert like he was trying to figure out what his angle was. My 10-year-old nephew asked why Robert was so much older than me. My 8-year-old niece wanted to know why we didn't have a real wedding with a dress and cake. Because sometimes adults do things differently than in movies, Robert said patiently. But don't you love each other? My niece pressed. I felt my face get hot, but Robert didn't seem uncomfortable at all. We care about each other very much, he said. Sometimes that's even better than love. My sister gave me a look across the table that said we would be having a private conversation about this later. After dinner, while Robert was helping David fix something in the garage, my sister cornered me in the kitchen. He seems nice, she said carefully. But you've been married for 2 days and you seem more like business partners than newlyweds. Maybe that's not a bad thing. She dried her hands on a dish towel and looked at me seriously. I'm worried you're settling. I'm worried you're so afraid of being hurt again that you're choosing someone safe instead of someone who makes you happy. Robert does make me happy. In a quiet way. What about passion? What about excitement? What about the kind of love that makes you feel like you can't breathe when he walks in the room? What about it? That kind of love didn't work out so well for me with James. James was a cheater. That doesn't mean all love is dangerous. I understood what she was trying to say, but I wasn't sure she understood what I was trying to build with Robert. Maybe I don't want the kind of love that makes me feel like I can't breathe, I said. Maybe I want the kind of love that makes me feel like I can breathe easier. She was quiet for a moment, considering that. If that's really what you want, then I'm happy for you. But promise me you'll be honest with yourself about what you're feeling. Don't talk yourself out of wanting more just because you're scared. On the drive home, Robert was unusually quiet. Your family is nice, he said finally. They're worried about me. I know. I would be too if I were them. I looked at him, surprised by his honesty. Do you think they should be worried? I think they love you and they want you to be happy. They're not sure I can make you happy because they don't understand what kind of marriage we're trying to build. Do you understand it? He was quiet for a long time, focusing on the road ahead of us. I think we're both trying to figure it out as we go, he said finally. That week, we settled into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Robert left for work early and I went to the library at my usual time. In the evenings, we cooked dinner together and talked about our days. We watched TV or read books, sometimes in the same room, sometimes separately. It was peaceful in a way my marriage to James had never been. There was no drama, no fighting, no wondering what mood he would be in when he came home. Robert was steady, predictable in the best possible way. But my sister's words kept echoing in my head. Was I settling? Was I so afraid of being hurt that I was choosing safety over happiness? On Friday night, Robert suggested we go out to dinner. Anywhere special? I asked. There's a new restaurant in town I've been wanting to try. Unless you'd rather stay home. No, going out sounds nice. The restaurant was small and intimate, with soft lighting and quiet music. The kind of place couples went for romantic dinners. Several other couples were there, holding hands across their tables, gazing into each other's eyes, looking like they were in love. Robert and I sat across from each other and talked about work, about the house, about books we had been reading. Pleasant conversation between two people who liked each other. But we weren't holding hands, weren't gazing into each other's eyes, weren't looking like we were in love. Do you ever miss it? I asked suddenly. Miss what? Being in love. The excitement, the passion, the feeling like the other person is the most important thing in the world to you. He considered the question seriously, the way he considered everything. Sometimes, he said. But I also remember how exhausting it was. Always wondering what Sandra was thinking, always trying to make her happy, always feeling like I wasn't enough. But there were good parts too, weren't there? Times when being in love felt amazing? Yes. But those times got fewer and farther between as the years went on. By the end, Sandra and I were staying together out of habit more than love. What if we're just skipping straight to the habit part? Would that be so bad? A lot of couples who start with passion end up with habit anyway. Maybe we're just being more efficient. I laughed despite myself. That's a very unromantic way to think about marriage. I'm a very unromantic person. You knew that when you married me. You're a good cook, I said as I watched him bread the chicken. My grandmother taught me. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was half a man. Smart woman. She was. She would have liked you. There was something in the way he said it that made me look up from the salad I was making. He was focused on his work, but I could see a softness in his expression that I hadn't noticed before. Why do you think that? Because you don't complain about things you can't change. Because you work hard without expecting praise for it. Because you're kind to people even when they don't deserve it. Like James? Like James. The mention of my ex-husband hung in the air between us for a moment. We didn't talk about James and Sandra much anymore, but they were always there in the background of our relationship, the reason we had found each other in the first place. Do you think we would have met under different circumstances? I asked. You mean if our spouses hadn't been cheating with each other? Yes. Robert stopped what he was doing and really considered the question. Probably not. We moved in different circles despite working for the same company. You were the librarian married to one of my employees. I was the boss married to a woman who didn't work outside the home. Our paths might have crossed at company parties, but we never would have really seen each other. Do you think that means this is all just circumstance? That we're only together because of what they did to us? Does it matter? We're here now building something together. The reason we started doesn't change what we're creating. My sister's family arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. David brought flowers, which he handed to me with a slightly awkward smile. My nephew immediately started exploring the house, fascinated by all the old furniture and hidden corners. My niece stayed close to my sister, watching Robert with curious eyes. This is a beautiful house, my sister said as I gave them a tour. Thank you. It was Robert's grandmother's. It feels like a home, David said, and I could tell he meant it as a compliment. Dinner went better than I had expected. Robert was patient with the children's questions and stories. He asked David about his work and actually listened to the answers. He complimented my sister on her parenting and seemed to mean it. How long have you two been together? My nephew asked during dessert. We got married 3 weeks ago, I said. But how long were you boyfriend and girlfriend first? Robert and I looked at each other across the table. We had known this question would come up eventually, but we hadn't prepared an answer. We were friends first, Robert said carefully. Sometimes when you're adults, you can know pretty quickly if someone is right for you. Like love at first sight? Something like that. After dinner, while Robert and David were outside looking at the garden, my sister helped me clean up in the kitchen. He's different than I expected, she said. Different how? Warmer. More genuine. I thought he might be stuffy or cold, but he's actually quite sweet. He is sweet. And he looks at you like he actually cares about you. He does care about me. Do you care about him? I thought about the question as I loaded plates into the dishwasher. Did I care about Robert? Yes, definitely. More than I had expected to when I agreed to marry him. But how much more? Yes, I said. I care about him a lot. Good. I was worried you were just going through the motions, but I can see that you're not. That night, after my family left, Robert and I sat on the couch in the living room. He had his arm around me and I was curled up against his side, feeling relaxed and content. That went well, he said. They like you. I like them too. Your nephew reminds me of my son at that age. curious about everything, full of energy. Do you miss your kids? Every day. But they'll come around eventually. Once they see that I'm happy and not just trying to hurt their mother. Are you happy? He was quiet for a moment, his hand stroking my hair. Yes, he said. Are you? Yes, I think I am. You think? I'm happy, but it's different than I expected happiness to feel. It's quieter, steadier. Less exciting but more peaceful. Is that good or bad? I think it's good. I think maybe I needed peaceful more than I needed exciting. We sat there in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the old house settling around us. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the wind rustling the trees outside, the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Can I tell you something? Robert said after a while. Of course. When I first proposed to you, I thought this would be easy. Two practical people making a practical decision. But it's more complicated than I expected. How so? Because I'm starting to feel things I didn't plan on feeling. And I don't know if that's good or if it's just going to complicate what we're trying to build. I lifted my head to look at him. What kind of things? Protective things. Caring things. Things that feel dangerously close to love. My heart started beating faster. Is that scary? Terrifying. Good scary or bad scary? I don't know yet. I settled back against his chest, thinking about what he had said. I was starting to feel those same dangerous things. The urge to make him smile, the disappointment when he wasn't there when I woke up, the way my day felt better when he came home from work. Maybe we don't have to be scared of it, I said. Maybe we can just let it happen and see where it goes. Without expectations? Without expectations. But what if it goes somewhere we're not prepared for? Then we'll figure it out together. He was quiet for a long time, his hand still stroking my hair. I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sandra and I were young, he said finally. Is that good or bad? I'm not sure. But I know I don't want to lose it. You won't lose it. We won't lose it. How can you be sure? Because we're not James and Sandra. We're not going to hurt each other the way they hurt us. Promise. Promise. That night, when Robert walked me to my bedroom door, our goodnight kiss lasted longer than usual. When we finally pulled apart, we stood there looking at each other with something that felt like wonder. Good night, he said softly. Good night. But as I got ready for bed, I found myself wishing he had asked to stay. Not for anything physical necessarily, but just to be close, to fall asleep next to someone who cared about me. Maybe tomorrow night I would ask him. Maybe it was time to take the next step in whatever we were building together. The thought should have scared me, but it didn't. For the first time since my divorce, I felt ready to be vulnerable with someone again. And if I was going to be vulnerable with anyone, I was glad it was Robert. The next morning, I woke up to find Robert already gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter saying he had driven into the city to meet with some clients and wouldn't be back until evening. I felt oddly disappointed, like I had been looking forward to seeing him at breakfast. I spent the day working in the garden, thinking about the previous night and the moment we had shared in the hallway. Had I imagined the connection I felt when he took my hand at dinner? Was I reading too much into a simple gesture of kindness? Around noon my phone rang. It was James. I stared at his name on the screen, debating whether to answer. We hadn't spoken since the night I told him I was filing for divorce. What could he possibly want to say to me now? Finally I answered, "Hello, James. I heard you got married." His voice sounded strange, hurt and angry and confused all at the same time. "Yes." To my boss. "Yes." There was a long silence. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, probably trying to figure out what to say next. "How could you do that?" he asked finally. "Do what?" "Marry him. Move on so quickly. Act like our 8 years together meant nothing to you." The anger in his voice surprised me. He was the one who had cheated, who had thrown away our marriage for 3 months of sneaking around with Sandra. How dare he be angry at me for moving on? "Our 8 years together did mean something to me," I said. "That's why it hurt so much when you betrayed them." But to marry Robert Mills? Of all people. My boss, the husband of the woman I was. The woman you were what, James? The woman you were sleeping with? The woman you chose over me? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? He was quiet for so long I thought he might have hung up. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "A terrible mistake. But that doesn't mean you should throw your life away by marrying someone you don't love." "Who says I don't love him? Do you?" The question caught me off guard. Did I love Robert? I cared about him, respected him, enjoyed his company. I felt safe with him, trusted him in a way I would never trust James again. But was that love? "That's not your business anymore," I said. You're making a mistake. He's using you to get back at Sandra and me. Can't you see that? Goodbye, James. I hung up before he could say anything else, but his words stayed with me for the rest of the day. Was Robert using me to get revenge on James and Sandra? Was this whole marriage just an elaborate way of getting back at the people who had hurt us? When Robert came home that evening, I was sitting on the front porch waiting for him. He looked tired from his long day in the city, but he smiled when he saw me. "How was your day?" he asked, sitting down next to me on the porch swing. James called. His smile faded. What did he want? To tell me I was making a mistake by marrying you. To suggest that you're using me to get revenge on him and Sandra. Robert was quiet for a moment, looking out at the garden where we had worked together that morning. What do you think? He asked. I don't know. Are you? He turned to look at me, and his expression was more serious than I had ever seen it. When I first proposed to you, maybe there was some element of that, he said slowly. Maybe part of me liked the idea of showing James and Sandra that we could move on and be happy without them. My heart sank. So James had been right. But that's not why I married you, Robert continued. I married you because I genuinely believe we can build something good together. Because I respect you and enjoy your company and think we're compatible in ways that matter. But you don't love me. I don't know what love means anymore. I thought I loved Sandra, but love didn't stop her from cheating on me. You thought you loved James, but love didn't stop him from cheating on you. Maybe what we have is better than love. Or maybe it's just fear dressed up as practicality. He considered that. Maybe it is. Does that make it wrong? I thought about the past 2 weeks of marriage, about the peace I had felt in this house, about the comfort of having someone to share meals and conversations and quiet evenings with. I don't know, I said honestly. Are you having second thoughts? I don't know that either. We sat on the porch swing in silence as the sun set behind the trees. It was a beautiful evening, warm and peaceful, the kind of evening that should have felt romantic. But I felt confused and uncertain about everything. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Last night at dinner when you took my hand, was that real? Or were you just playing the part of a husband? He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. It was real, he said finally. I wanted to touch you, wanted to feel connected to you. It surprised me too. Good. Because it felt real to me. Where does that leave us? I don't know. But maybe we don't have to figure everything out right now. Maybe we can just keep getting to know each other and see what happens. No pressure, no expectations? No pressure, no expectations. That night, when Robert walked me to my bedroom door, we stood in the hallway again looking at each other. But this time, instead of just saying goodnight, he leaned forward and kissed me softly on the lips. It wasn't passionate or desperate or overwhelming. It was gentle and sweet and full of possibility. When he pulled back, we looked at each other with surprise, like we had both discovered something unexpected. Good night, he said softly. Good night. I went to bed feeling hopeful for the first time since James's phone call. Maybe Robert and I didn't have the kind of love that poets wrote about, but we had something real and honest and growing. Maybe that was enough to build a life on. The next week, we fell into an even more comfortable routine. Robert would kiss me goodnight at my bedroom door, a soft, sweet kiss that made me look forward to bedtime. We held hands while watching TV, sat closer together at dinner, touched each other in small ways throughout the day. It wasn't passionate love, but it was something. Something that belonged to us, that we were building together without pressure or expectations or fear. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Robert asked me a question that surprised me. Do you want to invite your sister and her family over for dinner this weekend? I'd like to get to know them better. Really? Really? They're important to you, which means they're important to me. I felt something warm spread through my chest, something that might have been the beginning of love. Not the desperate, all-consuming love I had felt for James, but something quieter and steadier and maybe more lasting. I'd like that, I said. Good. We'll cook together, show them what our life is like. Our life. I like the sound of that. Saturday morning, Robert and I drove into town to shop for groceries for dinner with my sister's family. It was the kind of ordinary married couple activity I had done hundreds of times with James, but somehow it felt different with Robert. More collaborative, less stressful. What does your nephew like to eat? Robert asked as we stood in the cereal aisle. Anything with sugar. But his parents try to limit that. And your niece? She's pickier. She doesn't like foods that touch each other on her plate. Robert nodded seriously, like he was taking notes for an important business meeting. We can work with that. We decided to make chicken parmesan with pasta and salad, foods that could be served separately for my niece, Simple enough that my nephew would eat it, fancy enough to impress my sister and her husband. As we walked through the grocery store together, I noticed other couples shopping. Some looked stressed, arguing about brands or budgets. Others looked bored, going through the motions of a routine they had done too many times. But a few looked happy, genuinely enjoying each other's company even while doing something as mundane as buying groceries. I wondered which category Robert and I fit into. We weren't arguing or looking bored, but were we happy? It was hard to tell the difference between contentment and happiness sometimes. What are you thinking about? Robert asked as we loaded bags into the car. Just watching other couples, wondering what their stories are. What did you conclude? That most marriages are probably more complicated than they look from the outside. Including ours? Especially ours. That afternoon, we cooked together in the kitchen, working side by side to prepare dinner for 4 adults and 2 children. Robert was methodical and precise, following recipes exactly. I was more improvisational, tasting and adjusting as I went. Somehow, our different styles complemented each other. "You're a good cook," I said as I watched him bread the chicken. "My grandmother taught me."